I'm Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate. I'm talking to Tony Brown, a billion-dollar deal maker. He's going to talk to us about some very creative deal making. Okay, Tony, what about bolt-ons?
Okay, so this is, there's a generic backstory, and that is that we always look when we're marketing a business to find buyers who will pay the most because they have the most to gain and the least to risk. So it's normally another industry player or somebody who understands the industry and who can bring more to this transaction or get more out of this transaction than just a standalone business acquisition. So contrast them to the basic investors who just want a high return on investment from a standalone business. So the more leverage they can bring or see in an acquisition, the better for everybody. The more value they see, the more they'll potentially pay, but obviously the better outcome for the company in general and all the stakeholders, including employees. Now, in this case, we had a retail business turning over 25 mil a year, and it had 50 retail stores. But as with many retailers, they were progressively getting squeezed on their margins to the point where, despite that turnover, the business was now at break even on an EBITDA basis and a negative EBIT. Now, we looked at this and thought, well, how are we going to market this? It's clearly worth something. It's a going concern. It has a lot of moving parts that work. So we decided that we would present the financials and we normalised them as we need to do, adjusting for all of the non-essential or non-relative items or relevant items, excuse me. And we then said, okay, now for an industry player, there are a lot of costs here that potentially won't apply. So we created an extra set of normalised financials that we'll call bolt-on scenario. So they exclude specific costs that a buyer won't need to duplicate if they bolted it to their existing business. Now, in this case, the business had about $2.5 million in a year of head office and distribution centre costs for their warehousing, carrying their stock, and basically administering the business and managing all those stores. So we did go to market, to the wider market, and we ended up with about 60 investor groups interested in buying the business. Now, the ultimate buyer was a direct competitor that had over 300 stores in exactly the same industry. Now, for them, they bought the store leases and they bought the stock, and they inevitably left behind the head office and the distribution centre. So although a few jobs went, there were many, many more saved, and the business obviously then became part of the wider group. And I have to say that the bolt-on scenario in that case even was viable, even though 85% of the stores were in the same shopping centres as the buyer's stores. They still saw a bolt-on scenario as advantageous, probably partly because they removed a major competitor, but mostly because they ended up with a greater spread of sites and better sites in many cases than they could have achieved on their own. So it definitely showed the value, and they adopted basically line by line our bolt-on scenario as their picture. And they could have seen that without us, but we really spelled it out and said, this is the way we think this business should go. And the fact that our clients endorsed those financials said, we're prepared for this. So it sent a signal to the buyers that we're ready to sell this to a bolt-on and manage the head office and distribution teams and costs and leases and other things as they went. So without that encouragement, the buyer may have thought that was too hard to achieve. Hope that helps everyone looking and saying, how do I get, when they're scratching their heads and saying, how do we get this business to market? Or in your case, what do you see in a business? Many buyers can, and you probably assist them, prepare those bolt-on scenarios, even if the sellers or their advisors or brokers haven't done so.
Absolutely. Every buyer that hires me, before they hire me, I say, let's look for the kinds of businesses that can be a platform to do a roll-up or bolt-ons, because otherwise you're buying what you see, and it's not as easy to grow companies as you might think, but the bolt-ons, using M&A really can work. First of all, you can avoid duplication of unnecessary overhead. And if it's a product company, your purchasing power goes up, meaning your costs could go down, or you have other favorable terms with suppliers. Go back to this deal, though. This was in retail. Do you think what's happening worldwide in the retail sector, we're going to see a lot more of these kind of deals?
I do, because the industry or the sector is rationalizing, and there's always gold in rationalizing mature industries. So whilst there was an online, and almost every business today has an online presence one way or the other, they had an online arm as well. Clearly that gave the businesses, both of the businesses, an extra lease on life and more time to adjust to the new market. So it definitely was a beneficial thing for both the buyer and the seller in that case. And I think we see it happening in other industries as well. But there are a lot of blooming retail businesses as well, standalone, coming up out of the ground, where others have, traditional old businesses have gone by the wayside.
Wow. Okay. Excellent story.
You're welcome. Pleasure, Ted, talking to you as always.
So Tony, how can people get in touch with you?
So they can contact us through probably our website's the best way, divestmergeacquire.com.
And Tony Brown, find you on LinkedIn too.
Of course, Ted.
All right. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, you. That's right, you. Have you been looking to buy an exciting and profitable business? Are you tired of searching, but only finding barriers that impede you from owning a wonderful business? Well, have we got some good news for you. You can find and buy the right business the right way. And you don't have to go it alone. For over 30 years, author and transaction advisor Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, has been helping buyers worldwide achieve win-win done deals. Ted Leverette says, you can't buy it if you can't find it. You see, buying a business is all about search. Because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. It's about being best and first. First on the scene with sellers and being the seller's first choice and top of mind for brokers and sellers. And most importantly, avoiding buyer competition. What about having to compete with other buyers? Well, you have to outbid them, which is a good way to pay more than a business is worth. Searchers do better with a winning business buyer marketing plan. And that's where Ted Leverette comes in. He'll help you prepare a winning plan. And then he'll guide your actions so you can find and then buy the right business the right way. But searching is not enough. The reality is too many people buy the wrong business. Or they buy the right business, but on the wrong terms. That's why, if you want to buy the right business the right way, it makes sense to have Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate, on your advisory team. And one of the best ways to know what the savviest searchers and buyers do is to read Ted Leverette's books, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy, and How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. You can get them at his website, partneroncall.com. Don't chance it. Right now, go to partneroncall.com, get the books, and schedule a free and private telephone conversation with Ted Leverette.